My guest today is an award-winning educator, program consultant, and author who has spent the past 30 years providing consultation, education, and training for schools, organizations, and UN agencies all over the world, aimed at decentering white, cisgender, heterosexual voices and privilege while supporting organizations and schools in becoming inclusive and affirming of people of all identities. She is the former executive director of Answer, a national sexuality education organization based at Rutgers University, and has also served as the Associate Vice President of Education and Training at Planned Parenthood of New York City. She's all that and so much more, including my friend of over 21 years. Cannot believe that. Please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Schroeder to Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. Elizabeth.
Thanks for the lovely introduction. I love it.
I mean, it's a mouthful, actually.
Yeah. I was
it's
like,
a
what
mouthful.
Are you talking about?
It's you. Sorry, it's you. And I left so many things off because your bio was kind of long. I asked Elizabeth to send me a short bio, 2 or 3 sentences. She sends me a book. And she said, that's the watered down version. This is not-
I didn't charge you for it, that book.
No. It's a lot. You stay incredibly busy. And what I want our guests, or I won't say our guests, our audience to know, and I know that they'll know this by the end of the interview. Elizabeth, you have always been one of the smartest women with a silently wicked sense of humor.
I don't know how silent, honey.
Well, you sneak it in there. I don't always expect it. And then here we are. And you just are innately compassionate and empathetic in your quest to create inclusive and affirming spaces in any space that you walk into. It's not something I think that is, I won't say it's intentional, but it is innate. It's something that just happens because of who you are and the light that you carry. And so I appreciate that. I wanted you to come on today though, because, you posted something that really resonated with me. I had been thinking about, Pride Month and how we as a podcast wanted to celebrate this and what we wanted to do, who we wanted to bring on, what voices needed to be amplified. Thank you for sipping out of your little sippy cup. Can you share that with the rest of the people? I mean, if you're just going to do it, sex is not a dirty word. It's not. It's not.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was feeling a cough coming on. Sorry.
No worries. So, and we'll get back to that cup in a minute because we need all the details on that. Yeah, so I was thinking about who I wanted to bring on, but I wanted the conversation to also have intention, be relevant, be timely. And the same day that I'm having this thought, I go, I'm on Instagram, scrolling as one does, and this pops up. So you posted and said, this was on June 2nd. Thinking about LGBTQ pride and how we and our allies need to show up in record numbers. For those of us who are cisgender and queer, we need to ultra represent for our trans and non-binary siblings who are literally being erased in this country. As many of you know, the first Pride was a riot led by trans people of color, and we cisgender LGBTQIA+ folks would not have the rights we have today were it not for these folks who risk their lives to say enough. Celebrate this month and every day, but please keep your outrage in the forefront. That's the part that got me. Please keep your outrage in the forefront. We have a lot of work ahead of us. And so today I wanted to have a conversation with you about this because it really got me wondering if, as an ally of the LGBTQIA+ community, if I could be doing more and if my outrage was out front enough.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for, everything that you do. I feel the same way about you. I could do an even longer intro for you.
Please don't.
And just thank you for having me and just everything. And for being interested in this. I mean, this is Pride Month. And when we think about Pride, we think about celebrations, being proud of who we are. And I would say there's so much to say about this. So there's let's talk about the alphabet soup first, right? So
Sure.
we know LGBTQIA plus
Mm-hmm.
are the identities that people tend to talk about, and the plus really is about all the people who are not featured in LGBTQIA, right?
Right.
And the wonderful thing is that there are so many additional identities that aren't reflected
Mm.
there. The main thing about pride, and you'll stop me if I get too eggheady here, but I think
It's
it's
okay.
important for folks to remember is that even though all the letters are together in one place, they refer to two different things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times with pride, people will say gay pride, like that's really what we
Right.
used to say, which didn't reflect all the other
All
sexual
the other.
orientations. Sexual orientation, you know all this. I really want to share
Yes.
this for the folks who are listening.
Thank you.
Sexual orientation has to do with the gender or genders of the people we are attracted to, both
Right.
romantically and sexually.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially when we think about younger folks, kids and adolescents, I like to say this is who we have the capacity to fall in love with, right?
I
So,
love the way that you put that. Who we have
yeah,
the capacity to fall in love with, because I think there's this thought that that's what we're aiming for at 4 and 5, and that's not at all what we're thinking about.
no,
It's who we have the capacity to fall in love with when we fall in love with someone. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love, I'll turn it back to you, which is I love the way you framed it in turn because what you're bringing up is the fact that feelings of love and feelings of sexual attraction are discovered. They're not
Okay.
chosen. It's not like we wake up one day and we're like, oh, Thursday, I'm attracted to men.
Right.
Right. So that's a
One
very,
would hope.
well, you get Monday and Wednesday too.
Yeah.
We got other days. But it's a big thing because when we talk about pride, we're just like with any other celebratory month, which there's pros and
Mm-hmm.
cons to have, like, oh, it's Black History Month. Yes, so
Yeah.
let's ignore folks of color every other month of the year. No, it should
Yeah.
be more, but I also get the upholding is because we focus on folks who are not in the power majority, we forget that anybody who's heterosexual, anyone who's straight, also has a sexual orientation. It just
Mm-hmm.
has to do with who you're attracted to. So I
Right.
think that's an important distinction, right?
Yes. Yes.
And for the T, which is about gender identity,
Yes.
a T's
Which is different than sexual orientation.
absolutely.
So let's
So
say that again for the people that are in the back.
absolutely. Hello. So the LGB of every letter other than T
Mm-hmm.
is about gender or sex assigned at birth, which that's the
Sure.
I, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The T has to do with gender identity, right? So everything
Mm-hmm.
else that's sexual orientation, who are you attracted to in terms of their gender presentation, something about their gender. So to talk about transgender, we should talk about cisgender first,
Sure.
right?
I think that's excellent because I think I had shared with you on our phone call. I had a family member who called me and was just like, I'm reading this article and it refers to the person as a cisgender female. She's like, what is that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that question. And I wish more people would ask that question because we're hearing it so much more. What does it mean to be cisgender?
I love it. And first of all, I love that your family member did that as well.
No.
And I'm sort of fast forwarding a little bit, but I know we're going to be talking about what does it mean
Yes.
to be an ally. And being an
Sure.
ally means not being afraid to ask the question or many
Yes.
questions, as
Yes.
well as who we ask questions of. So let's put a pin in that and
Yes.
come back to it because
Yes.
that's also important. Who we ask to educate us and who we don't,
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So that was great. So this is the way I like to explain it to people is when we're born, whoever delivers us takes a look at our genitals, and based on what they see there, they make a declaration. And the declaration is usually in a binary, meaning only two. So if they see a penis
Right.
and testicles, it's a boy. Or if they see a vulva, it's a girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we know is that basically that's not necessarily accurate because you can't always tell. Nature loves
Right.
diversity. So
Sure.
it could be that someone is intersex, which is the I.
Mm-hmm.
The old term for that is hermaphrodite, which folks should not use anymore. And I really wanted to emphasize that because that's a common term that people have used. It's considered
Right.
very offensive. by folks who are intersex. But in most cases, you're going to hear this too, binary. Now, what's so interesting about that is as soon as the declaration is made, then the outside world starts telling you how you should behave because of that declaration. And we've had some progress, don't you think? You know, we've moved a bit. But if someone is assigned girl or assigned female at birth, then you're supposed to wear these colors and play with these toys and all that kind of stuff. Where we get into, that's gender. So the social stuff is gender, the sex assigned at birth is the body parts, and the declaration that someone makes based on what they perceive those body parts to be. Then what happens is as we become aware of the world, we understand who we are on the inside.
Yes.
Okay. And so if someone says to me, and I'll use myself as an example, because I am cisgender, that if someone assigned me at birth, they said to my folks, you have a girl. As I grew up as a child and today as an adult, my feeling on the inside is, yes, I am. I am a girl. I am female. So that means the sex assigned at birth and the gender identity match. I am cisgender because cis at the beginning means same. So my gender identity is the same as the sex I was assigned at birth. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I think people are going to rewind that just so that they can hear it again, which is fine. Love it. But yes, that makes perfect sense that my genitalia and my internal sense of maleness or femaleness or gender, that those two things match.
Absolutely. And I like the way you said maleness or femaleness, because this introduces us now into being transgender or non-binary, which is the reminder and the knowledge that people aren't either or. So it could be someone's maleness or femaleness or their combination of the two or the absence of it altogether. And what I like to tell folks about being transgender, you know, going back to what does the word mean, at the beginning of the word trans means crossing something. So I'm in New York. If I took a flight to Europe, I would be taking a transatlantic flight because it's crossing, right? So being transgender means crossing the binary, but it doesn't necessarily mean your destination is the other end of this binary. It could be anywhere in between, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. So it gets us away from the idea of there are only two and that there is a goal or a destination. This is why there are folks I know who are trans and non-binary who will say, "Oh, it's not a binary at all. It's a circle. It's a shape. It's another shape altogether. There is no either or. Well, there are either or for people who are cisgender, and even in that, we might express ourselves in all sorts of ways.
It is definitely a spectrum. Yeah, and there's some fluidity in that spectrum.
Yep. Absolutely. And there are so many, just as your family member asked you the question about what does this word mean, there are so many resources online and so many places people can go to learn about the many additional identities that people who are, I don't like to define people by like not the majority, but there are so many additional identities. I hate leaving anybody out, but to discover the way folks are identifying and claiming their identity. There's a lot more out there than even just cisgender, transgender, non-binary. There's many, many more than that.
And I just thought about something, you know, at the end of the podcast, we always ask people to ask questions if they have any additional questions, and we can answer those on future episodes. We take polls. And so I think the question that I'm going to pose at the end of the podcast, and you'll be able to pull this up on Spotify, would be if there are identities that we missed or anything that you feel like needs further clarification, if you'd like to contribute to the conversation, explain or offer up an added piece of information with all of the identities, because we certainly don't want to leave anyone out, but it's definitely an opportunity to educate us all on what is happening that maybe we don't know about or aren't aware of in the community. So a couple of different things that we talked about. Sexual orientation is different than gender identity. And that also is different from gender expression, how one expresses their gender identity, which is,
Right.
again, back again, different than sexual orientation. Can you say a little bit about gender expression? Because I think that that's been part of that that has added to a lot of confusion with people who maybe are or aren't allies, like who are. Yeah, can you just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, like you said, gender expression, how do we let people know what gender we are? And that's even a bit simplistic, because there may be on certain days that we're feeling a little more feminine, a little more masculine, a little bit more combined, a little bit more like nothing. Like
Right.
I'm not even connecting to my gender identity kind of thing.
Right.
And expression, and you see me grinning like a fool over here, because I'm so excited by the diversity that is out in the world. And so when I meet someone who is not me, I'm so excited by that, because it's learning and it's a reminder of how much it's like this cornucopia of people and identities. It's just so great. But there might be some days when I might want to get my nails done, and I want to wear jewelry, or want to wear makeup, or do something that connects for me what is stereotypically, and that's an important word, associated with girls and women. Now, having said this, what I also love about the generation of young people who are coming up is they were not raised, I almost said brainwashed, and I'm going to say it, around what you're supposed to do, or what you're supposed to wear, or do anything based on your gender. I see so many more young folks who are male presenting, and that language is important, because I don't know what their gender identity is unless they tell me. But I see them and they've got their nails done, and I'm like, good on you. Why should we be the only ones who have nice looking nails? I have, I'm sure he won't.
Cuticles pushed back like
Thank
the rest
you.
of us.
Thank you. And stop chewing on them. Like, make them look pretty. I think about my son, who I have carte blanche consent to talk about. He has given me that permission.
You know how I feel about the boy.
Yeah. Okay. So Tiff and my son have a 21-year relationship from babyhood, when he was a round
That's
circle.
how we figured out that we've known each other for 21 years.
Because he's about to be 21.
He was a baby.
Baby when we started our doctorate program.
Does he still smell the same? Does he still smell?
He does not. And I could have told you that at the beginning of puberty. And he used to get mad at me. So he starts puberty, and he would come out of his room with this look on his face and be like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, honey, that's you.
It's you.
That's not mom's fault. That's you. I'm really sorry, but that's you. But he's so great. And he and his friends, and I know it's not everybody, but he is cisgender. So he was assigned male at birth, and he identifies as male. He is heterosexual. He is attracted to and in a relationship with a cisgender woman, right? He has a beard and a mustache. When you look at him, you perceive him to be stereotypically masculine. He gets his nails done when he feels like getting his nails done. When he and his girlfriend go out sometimes she'll do some makeup, like some eyeliner on him or something. And they don't think of it as anything like, oh, we're pushing a boundary, or we're making a statement, or whatever. They just do it.
They're just being.
They're just being.
They're just being.
Great.
What an existence.
Right.
What a time.
Right. What an existence and what a time. I so agree with you that they can do it. Now, there is
that they have a parent who is not trying to you're outside of the box, you're stepping outside of the box, get back in the box. Absolutely. What a joy it is as a kid to be affirmed.
Now that's the bumper sticker. What a joy it is as a kid to be affirmed. And let's bring that to us as adults, because everybody who's listening to this, and I'm going to make a generalization, knows what it feels like to be affirmed, and knows what it feels like to not be affirmed at some point. And we know the power of affirmation, and we know the destructive impact of not being affirmed or seen or heard or criticized or being told there's something wrong with you. And that's what every single transgender, non-binary, child, adolescent, teen, adult is experiencing in this country right now. It's absolutely abhorrent that they are under attack. It's more than criticized, teased. They are literally under attack, and it's
Under attack.
terrifying.
Under attack.
Yeah.
Under attack. And
Yeah.
it's very scary. And from your perspective, I'm trying to ask this in a really good, in a poignant way.
Ask it any way you want, Bev. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Where does that perception come from? Because I feel like there is this perception that the queer community as a whole, but particularly those that you just mentioned, that it is so scary. Do you feel like it's a lack of understanding? Do you feel like it's actual fear? Like, what has changed in the past? And it's been this way for a long time, but for right now, like, this is the focus. Where does this fear come from, if that's what it is?
It's such a great question, and I bet a lot of different people would have a lot of nuanced different responses to it. So I think it's a combination, to be honest. I think that some of this is genuine fear, but fear that it has been created. I'm going to sound paranoid. I'm going to sound like everything's fine. A conspiracy, yet
this is a trusting tree. We're all friends here.
All right.
We're going to let you go as far as you need to go, and then I'll wheel you back.
That's great. I'm going to wrap my arms around this tree and not let go here. And forgive me, I'll give a content warning now. I have to get political here because it is connected to politics and it's connected to the law, because that's where we are. So ultra conservatives, social conservatives right now and the states where it's most conservative, the leadership is conservative, are the ones who are very invested in not just taking the rights away from trans people, but to literally erasing them from the face of the earth. And we do have video of people saying this at conservative conferences. And certainly if you read any of the laws, you go to any of the states, you know that that's now codified into law. So one part of it is part of a political agenda. It's so ironic because these are the same folks who have always said there's a gay agenda and there's a trans agenda, when in fact there is a heterosexual cisgender conservative in many cases. And again, no criticism to anyone who is Christian, but this more evangelical thing of saying that it is wrong to be, as if it's right or wrong. It's not a choice. Right. It's wrong to be this. The Bible says there are only two genders. P.S. It doesn't. But those kinds of things. So what happens is when something becomes an agenda is it's very intentionally, because you're an expert in the media, there are talking points, there are messages that are put out, and there's no real concern about them being true. So that's what people start hearing when they're in their churches on Sundays, if they're Christian. This is what people hear when they go to meetings. It's what they hear on social media or read. And so that starts to take on. I think you and I have talked about, too, that whether it's transphobia, homophobia, whether it's racism, whether it's ableism or sexism, when we're afraid of something, it's usually because we don't know anybody who is that identity that we have fear about. So I think that's part of it, is the fear. Some of it is ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance like you're dumb. Ignorance is, like I said, you just
not knowing.
Exactly. Just not knowing. There's one component though, Tiff, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts too, because I do think this applies to any other ism and phobia, which is, I feel like there's a difference between, I don't know someone who is like you, and therefore I'm uncomfortable with you. And that translating into, I don't know who someone like you is, and I'm uncomfortable, and therefore I have to harm you. Therefore I have to physically hurt you. I have to take your rights away, or I need to eradicate you. And again, we know this from racism. We know this from ableism and sexism. So what do you think is that?
Well, that I have a problem with it. That's the shit that I don't understand, because we talked last week's episode was with Brent Starr, who is a drag performer here in Atlanta, and we talked a little bit about this. People are out here living their lives, minding their business, making, like, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier about being affirmed as a child, but just affirming themselves, you know? Um, and those of us who don't agree with someone's existence, um, whom they are, who they present as, you have an opportunity to not engage, stay home, flip a channel, not go to a program or show or event, avoid. You have an opportunity to mind your business. Yet the choice that you make is to terrorize, torment, um, just to be a terrible human,
Yeah.
and act as though this person does not have the right to be a human being themselves.
Mm.
And it is, and I cannot explain it. I don't understand it. During the height of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, I kept hearing this analogy from folks who didn't understand the Black Lives Matter movement, why Black Lives Mattering was such a big deal when, of course, everyone else's life, every other, group mattered
Right.
as well.
All
And the
lives
analogy,
matter, right? Yeah.
right. And so the analogy was that the fire truck doesn't stop at every house, just the one that's on fire right now. And at the time, Black lives were like literally on fire, right? And today it is trans lives, is our trans youth, their lives are the ones on fire. And so I wonder the same thing, like, how did we get here? Why are we so hyper focused on this group of individuals who have just been trying to exist in their own bodies, doing their own thing, living, they want to live. And as individuals who don't understand, don't agree, and are mortified by their mere existence, they're trying to keep them from existing, making it almost impossible for some to exist in this space, and they have every right to. So I don't understand it. I don't have an answer for it.
I so appreciate that. And I hadn't heard that analogy about the fire truck. And it's such an eye roll, because it shouldn't be a competition, right? And I think what people also forget, like, when we focus on, we do have to focus on individual identities when the fire is raging.
Yeah.
And we also have to remember, and you and I were talking about Professor Kimberly Crenshaw talking about intersectionality, which is no one of us is a single identity.
Right.
So trans people of color are experiencing this transphobia and this attempt at eradication while also experiencing racism on the daily.
Yes.
And so there's additional, then you have a trans person of color who's living with a disability. I mean, there's so many aspects of
so
this.
many layers. And so
many layers.
So let's talk about trans women of color, because the statistics show that trans people are being attacked and murdered at an increasingly alarming rate. And Black trans women specifically are faring far worse than any other demographic. Let me read this to you. It's from an excerpt from a paper written in the Harvard Civil Liberties Law Review. And it notes that the easiest answer to why Black trans women are disproportionately victims of fatal violence is that they're Black, they're transgender, and they're women. Each of those distinct identities means that they face discrimination, prejudice, and inequities on multiple fronts, which is essentially what you're saying. There's, like, we're getting hit from all sides.
Absolutely. And it's also it's kind of like, and I want to be careful how I say this, because I'm thinking of my own identity as a queer woman, of, the way in which homophobia shows up and the way in which transphobia shows up, there is bias within the bias there. So
Speak about that. What do you mean?
Because the dominant culture, right? So the highest, the Kobe beef, right? The highest level on the food chain is white, heterosexual, cisgender Christian men. Okay. So that's the highest food chain. So who is most threatening to that power majority identity? It's going to be a gay man. It's going to be a transgender woman. And the reason for that is that whole fear of not understanding and the homophobia that there's something wrong with gay women. But you noticed starting even in the 90s, gay men, excuse me, in the 90s, what we were talking about is gay women was the hottest thing ever, as long as their gender presentation was very effeminate, very, right there. Right. So there really is this sense that there is prejudice, there is violence, there are microaggressions. I have experienced deep homophobia. I experience microaggressions almost on the daily. It happens a lot. And being a gay woman, I don't experience, and someone who passes, I have passing privilege,
and someone who's white.
I'm educated. I mean, there are so many things that protect me, but gay men are more threatening to straight cisgender men. And so as a result, there is greater violence, physical violence. That doesn't mean that my lesbian siblings do not experience physical violence. I'm just lucky, right? When you talk about someone who is a transgender woman, you're talking about someone who is assigned male at birth, who knows that they are female. If they're a woman, if they're trans woman, not being non-binary or a combination of genders. And so that is such a threat, because the majority, the cis male power majority that is so uncomfortable with that is like, why on earth would you do that? Why on earth would you become a woman? Nobody's becoming a woman. They always knew themselves, or they discovered who they are. And it's that there is a level of not just fear, but a disgust with that. I will say that if you were going to do an inverse of this, and I've heard this myself as a sexuality educator, there is greater understanding among cisgender people. I'm generalizing a bit. This is anecdotal, who would be like, oh, someone who was assigned female at birth who is now male. I get that. I can understand that. And that's tied into sexism, which is any man that is feminine, effeminate female, you're abasing yourself. You are lowering yourself. But when you do something as someone assigned female that is stereotypically male, you are improving yourself. I mean, think about that. That's at the heart of it. When we think about our kids, so a little girl who plays with stereotypically male toys, a construction kit or whatever, isn't that great? She's doing something stronger. But a boy who plays with a toy kitchen or dolls, we jump on that shit right there, right in the moment, right? And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the confusion between gender and sexual orientation, because a boy who does something effeminate must be gay.
Right. And he's going to turn gay,
right? And that's something also that I hope in us talking about to help parents and caregivers understand is you don't make your child anything. You don't make your child straight. You don't make your child gay. You don't make your child cisgender or transgender or non-binary. Your job as a parent is to love your child, period.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
And help them to love themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. And affirm them when they do.
Yep.
And encourage them. Just keep pouring into them.
Yes.
And letting them know, like, we should, in every sense of the word, I believe we should be allowing our children and even encouraging our adult friends to let their freak flags fly.
Absolutely.
No matter what it is, whether it has to do with gender identity or orientation or just them being a fucking weirdo.
Really?
Just let them. It's okay. It's okay. It will make the world a better place, a funner place, a better existence for all of us, I believe.
Yeah. Because in the end, the freak flag does nothing to you. It's like you said, it does nothing to you. You just don't like it. So like what you said before, then don't look at it. Don't watch it. The fact that we have gone from I'm uncomfortable with trans and non-binary people to we are now passing laws. Do you know that there were over 500 pieces of legislation introduced in the last year against transgender and non-binary people. And I love, that's so sarcastic, I do not love this, but I love how the social conservatives who are all about parental rights have permitted laws that take away parental rights to be passed, because the laws in so many states are saying your child cannot receive gender affirming care, even if you as the parent support it. So now we don't have parental rights. That's flat out hypocrisy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's it's quite disheartening when we know that access to healthcare in this country is already you know, really difficult
Yeah.
for a great number of folks. And now to tack on top of that, we're seeing a lot of families take their children out of states,
Yes.
you know, to get care, basic care. Can you talk about that, the impact of that? Because what we're essentially doing is telling parents who've identified, who go to the doctor with their child, who you know have had conversations about their health care. The people that are making these laws haven't had individual conversations with these children or their parents to understand what their health care needs are, but have determined that they should not have access to the health care that the child, the parent, and the doctor have all agreed would be helpful in raising a happy, well adjusted human.
Absolutely. It's the hubris of white evangelical supremacy in Christianity. I'm sorry. It just is. It is the hubris of, I know what's best for everybody because I am so supreme and superior. All of this stuff goes against everything that's in the Bible. I digress, different podcast. So what is
same podcast, just a different day, honey.
Thank you. All
we'll
right.
get to it. You'll come back and we'll
back.
talk. We'll go through
it
the
in
Bible.
September. Yeah.
Yes.
So you know, it is. So let's dissect a bit what this is looking like on the daily, right? So let's take the country of Florida for an example here, which is first of all, Florida has the second highest adult transgender population in the United States, right after California. So that's adults right there. Let's go back to intersectionality. If I have finances, if I'm economically, I have privilege, I have more options than anybody else, right?
Yes.
So there are a lot of folks who are saying, you know, from other states where it is safer, they're saying, well, just relocate. Okay, so do I have the financial stability that I can leave my job? And do I have a kind of job where I can work remotely? Am I able to sell my home if I even own a home? Can I break my lease? These are just the financial questions right there. And then where do I go? Where do I set up? Will I have a job? Do I have a home? Do I have someone I can stay with while I figure this out?
Right. Is it safe for me?
Is it safe for me? Because going back to how the laws were passed, a number of the most restrictive laws have tried to, these are not laws saying leave our state. These are laws saying don't exist. Because a number of states have laws that if you move from Florida and you go up to another state, say in the Northeast, where it's more socially progressive and safer, the law in the original state will criminalize the healthcare provider in the state you move to. So if you provide gender affirming care there, you can face consequences in the original law. So a number of states like Connecticut, and I believe New Jersey, have passed laws protecting healthcare providers in their state, saying you cannot be sued by somebody else. So
this is a scary time. Not even, and you know, I won't say it started, but you know, when Roe v. Wade was overturned as well, we were experiencing this then. And so again, the fire truck was there, you know, the fire truck was there.
Totally.
And we can't forget, you know, that fire truck is moving to the next fire and this is the next fire. But that was something that we were experiencing then as well, that like doctors, even our medical professionals who got into this profession to do the work that they have been doing, in honoring that commitment that they have, aren't able, like their hands are being tied and aren't able to practice effective medicine as they're the ones that studied this. Okay. They kind of know what they're doing, aren't even able to practice what they've studied because of of their own fear of retaliation, fear of being thrown in jail, fear of charges or their medical license being taken away or suspended. Like this is a sad existence.
Absolutely.
A very, very sad time.
The folks who are in, like, we'll go back to Florida now. So when the law was signed, the law basically said you must detransition. And what that meant was you're not going to have hormones available to you. You must now live as the sex you were assigned at birth. Now, I don't know. I was trying to find an analogy, and
I got one.
You do go.
I have one
go.
that just came into my head. Let's say you're going through menopause. Okay. Your doctor gives you some hormones to help with those hot flashes, with the dry vagina, with the night sweats, with the crazies, the ADHD that's come along with the menopause and everything. And then someone says, you know what, girls, you don't need that. You just need to be exactly who you are. Come up off of that estrogen. No more testosterone for you. Progesterone, where you don't need that. We just want you to be exactly who God made you to be. Now, there will be a bunch of raggedy broads walking around here if they can't have their hormone replacement therapy.
Yes. I may or may not be one of them, but I'm gonna put that out.
And that is not the best comparison, but it is very much critical to women who are of a certain age who seek out this medical treatment to help them get through a transitional part of their lives. This is medically necessary for them to exist. You don't really want to see her without her hormones.
Yeah, no, you do not. You do not, you know. And the phrase that really I just grabbed onto that you said was medically necessary, because the difference between, I think because it's hormones, you're in the right neighborhood, right, of what's going on.
Yeah.
The difference is, like, I think we can, if we're cisgender, we cannot know what it's like to look in the mirror every single day and see something that doesn't match what we know is true. We know it to be true. And so this legislation it's punitive. It's forcing you. It's saying your experience is wrong. So the thing that makes it even more serious than the not getting any kind of treatment, whether it's a hormonal treatment or a medical treatment. Could you imagine being diagnosed with cancer and them saying, no, you do not deserve to live, so you may not have this? And I'm not talking about economically. I'm just saying no, because we don't think you're worthy.
We've decided.
That's right.
We've decided for you.
Absolutely.
That this is not the way to go.
So
we've decided.
What we're going to see, and already we see it just for the anticipatory anxiety, we are going to see a lot more suicidal ideation. We are going to see a lot more suicide attempts, and we're going to see a lot more people being successful. And the shitty thing about that is there are enough cisgender, heterosexual, privileged folks who are going to be just fine with that. And that's what this is about. This is more than discrimination. This is hatred. This is deep hatred. The way racism is deep hatred from some people. The way it is, it's not just ignorance, but it's like, I don't want you on this planet. And that, the fact that, and this is when you were saying it was scary. Yeah. This isn't one state. You need to look at some of the maps showing the least safe states. We're talking, if it's not half, it's going to be half, if not more than that. So there's a minority of states where it's truly safe for trans and non-binary adults and children. My gosh, the babies, babies who have loving, affirming family, whose entire state is saying you shouldn't exist. There's something wrong with you.
Your parents are wrong for helping you to live in a happy, healthy existence.
That's right.
And that they are wrong for just being exactly who they are. You know, there takes a tremendous amount of resilience and strength within this community of folks. How can those of us, I talked to Brent about being, the token straight friend and ally, but how can those of us who love and support the community do a better job?
It's a great question. And I really am grateful in my queer heart for the question. And I'll also say, because I am both queer and an ally to genderqueer people, right? So those things can exist. And the very first thing I would say, and this is not exclusively to you, but to anybody who's watching or listening, again, I'll go back to many, if not most of us have experienced something, whether it's sexism, it's racism, it's ableism, whatever kind of discrimination for being Jewish, for being Muslim, for any kind of discrimination. Each person's experience of discrimination is different. Different racism is different from homophobia, but the harm and the feeling that you experience when someone is telling you you are not human, that's familiar to all of us. We know the harm that caused. We know what it does to our self-esteem. We know that it causes us not to sleep well at night, and it affects our physical health. So as we talk about specific ideas, I'm going to invite people who are not heterosexual and not cisgender to try to tap into that experience, to say, even if you don't understand all of the terminology or the identities, or what's gender identity versus sexual orientation, go back to that very human experience of the golden rule. Gosh, I don't mean to be so simplistic, but we should not be harming each other. So hold on to that, and then think about, like for you, Tiffany, if someone has committed a microaggression, a racial microaggression, and someone spoke up, so you think about, that's one of the first things. What did you want from allies yourself? So speaking up is one thing.
I'll tell you.
Go from your
So
experience.
I'll tell you, I did, and I want to say, no, it wasn't 2014. I don't know. It was a long time ago because I'm old. I did, this is before we graduated. Might have been 2004, I think. I did a study abroad in Prague. And I was the only Black student that went over and did this study, and I was there for a month. And it was interesting the way that my experience of being treated. There was one afternoon we had gone to Vienna, Austria, to hear the symphony, and I was walking with another student, and at some point an apple flew by my head. And that was just like one of many little things, like isolated. I might have thought, oh, well, that apple just whizzed by. But because so many other things had happened, I'm like, this is very tough for me. And I remember when we were doing a bit of a debriefing on some other things and everyone's experience there, I was so tearful, and I was very upset about how I, as a Black person, was treated in this particular country, and what my experience was, because my experience was very different from every other student, because I had a little extra melanin, so things weren't going the same way. Not that I didn't have a good experience as a whole, but I was experiencing something else that no one else could identify with. And what was said to me by one student was, I don't want you to take this as how it is everywhere in Europe and not want to explore other places. Like, it's not like that when you go to France. It's not like this when you go here or there. And I'm like, how and my response was, how would you know what it's like for someone who's Black in Paris, or who's Black in another country? You're not Black.
Right.
You can tell me what your experience is.
Right.
But you can't understand what it is like for me. And that's why these discussions are so important. And that's why I ask the questions that I'm asking, because I need to know what the experience is like for you. Honor that this has been your experience, not take away from it and say, well, if you had done something different, or it's not really like that, honor that this is where you are in this experience. And ask the question, how can I be of a better support to you? If this is going to be your lived experience, if this is how the world is, what can I do to make our time together, to make this experience better, so that you don't come out of this experience feeling the way that you do: shitty, hated, disrespected, hurt, disappointed. These are not things that we should want for another human. They shouldn't have to accept
Right.
those feelings. Their existence shouldn't be shrouded by those feelings. What can I do as someone who loves you, who wants this? What is it that I can do? And I think there are two things. I think we have to think about how we would want to be treated. But I think as people within those communities, it's up to us to be able to articulate what our needs are. And let me share this with you. Wanda Sykes, she posted something the other day that said, "Pride is more than rallies and activism. As an ally, the best thing you can do is foster understanding and awareness of the ongoing struggle for us to exist safely in this space. The only way forward is to do this together." And I believe that the only way forward is to do this together. I can assume what you need, and I can march, I can rally, I can advocate, I can post a sign, I can wear a t-shirt. But you need to tell me also what's helpful to you.
Absolutely.
and what's not. Like, you may not need me at the rally. What you might need me to do is sit up at the at the Senate.
Yeah.
Or write a letter to the congressman.
Yep.
Or go march somewhere else. Like, you might not need this, but you really might need my voice.
Yep.
You really might need the podcast. You might really need us to show up in a way that maybe we haven't thought about, because that's going to elevate the needs of the community as a whole in a much better way.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, let me just go back for 1 sec. I just think it fucking sucks that you had that experience in Vienna, and I'm so sorry.
Me too.
I'm so sorry for.
I appreciate it.
Because it is because when something shitty is done to another human being, it chips away a little bit at humanity. Yeah. And I will also own it. Easy to armchair quarterback this, woulda, shoulda, coulda. But I also will say this is tied into being allies. I'm noticing that not one white person went over and was like, "Did you throw that apple?" I mean, not that everybody is from New York and would go and do it, and is Italian is going to be like, "Hey, excuse me," do it that way. And that's when we talk about being an ally. We if you want to be an ally, we do not tolerate bad behavior. And let's talk about what that looks like, because people may be clear. They should have been clear in that case. But they're clear. Like, if I were walking down the street and someone came up and were physically threatening me, if there were other people around, somebody might come and intervene. Now, I'm also a white cis woman, right? So there's other reasons people might do it. But what my point is that when we see the most egregious examples of like physical violence, everybody's on, well, not everybody, the homophobes aren't on board and the transphobes aren't on board, but more people will be on board that, okay, that's physical violence. I get that.
Right.
We have to intervene in the tiniest specific things that we hear, whether it's jokes, whether it's somebody says something inappropriate, because these are all bricks that build the bigger wall of prejudice and bias and racism and homophobia and transphobia. I've always said to people, like, it's not homophobic and transphobic or racist or both just because there isn't a person of that identity who is around to hear it. Even if you say it and it's not in front of someone, it's still just as homophobic and transphobic. And so if we are someone who hears that comment and we don't say anything about it, we are enabling it. So the first and foremost, and I have wonderful colleagues I work with, we're a team that work on a lot of projects, and our slogan is "Say the Thing." And so a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I don't want to make a foo-foo out of it, and I don't want to make the person feel uncomfortable." In that moment, we're prioritizing the person who has said the insult over the person who's being harmed by it. So we have to really put on our big people panties and say, you know what, I don't like that. Or you may not know, but that, so I gave an example at the beginning. Oh my gosh, you used the term hermaphrodite. Actually, I just want to share with you, that's an outdated term and it's considered really offensive. The correct term, or the current term, is intersex or difference in sexual development, whatever it happens to be at the time. And then you move on, right? So the other thing as allies is we also have to be a bit more humble. And I think you were talking about that in terms of asking people as opposed to, I'm going to swoop in and do it, to say, you tell me how I can help you. At the same time, we also need to be willing to get it wrong. So there are
Yes.
times to swoop in, and we just have to be okay if someone says, I didn't need you in that moment. Fine.
Yeah.
That is okay. You might
Yeah.
feel a little bruised. Get over it, get past it. You
Yeah.
still
Get over
showed
yourself.
up. Like I've been in
Yeah.
situations where someone intervened when there was a microaggression. And afterwards I said, I thank you so, so much. I really appreciated it. I had it, but I appreciated that you showed up because
Right. Yeah.
maybe I didn't.
Because yeah, there are other people that don't.
Right.
You had an interesting interaction with a customer service person recently. You want to share that?
Absolutely. Thanks. So
Yeah.
I was speaking with someone. It was about a bill that I had received for like a healthcare bill. And I was speaking with them, and the person said, who's the primary person on your health insurance? And I said, well, my partner. And the person said, what's your husband's name? And I said, well, actually, it's my partner, and her name is, and I gave her name. And the person, and usually, and I said this in the post, like, this happens all the time, and so you just move past it.
Yeah.
You choose your battles, right? And you just move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
I gave the benefit of the doubt. We shouldn't be, imposed upon to give the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I chose to. And we started talking, and then the customer service rep stopped and said, you know what? Wait a minute. I'm so sorry. I got that wrong. I really apologize. And I said, it's fine. This happens. Don't worry about it. And they said, I appreciate you saying that, but I need to do better. And I said, well, I appreciate you saying that. And I said, and I need to
Yeah.
be doing better around anti-racism and on fighting ableism and all sorts of things. So we had this lovely conversation for like 5 minutes about like microaggressions and all sorts of things. And this is someone who like works for a healthcare company. So
Yeah.
it just was a beautiful human moment where the person acknowledged that they stumbled. They apologized. They said, I want to do better. I acknowledged the same thing. And then we moved on. So it's so important for folks to know, like, if you're an ally, don't make it about you. Make it about the other person.
Yeah.
And we didn't need, like, the customer service rep wasn't on the phone then for 20 minutes self-flagellating and saying, I'm a terrible, awful person.
Right.
And then that stuff you do
Yeah.
on your own. And that goes back to at the beginning when I was talking about who do you ask questions of. Ask the questions and also choose who you debrief or process with, right? So there are certain things about anti-racism as I go on my journey that I'm going to talk with a white person about. I'm not going to burden a person of color, or I'm going to,
Thank you.
yeah, welcome, no problem. You can delete all my voicemails. But that's the kind of thing, because these aha moments we have, whether we're straight or cisgender or white or person of color, any aha moments we have are messages and learnings that the person who is of the marginalized identity has known and lived their whole lives. So even if we get excited, like, hey, I've had people come to me, oh, bless your heart. And I mean that in not the mean Southern way that y'all do,
Right.
but like really bless you that they come and they're like, I just learned this. And I was like, welcome to my world. But I don't say that because I get it. They're very, very sweet and excited. And I don't want to diminish their excitement, because that will keep them as allies. And at the same time, I would say, straight people, talk amongst yourselves about what you've learned and that. And then, like I said, say the thing. I will say, if someone is a resourced person and can make contributions, there are organizations, and particularly those serving trans and non-binary people and families, where they're starting to have funds, moving funds to help people.
Yes.
But how much can one fund do for so many people? So choose where you give if you're able to give money. Go as local as you can. I think that's super, super important.
Yeah.
And then, yes, people will say this, oh, I'm not voting. I'm not going to do anything. That's,
that is not the
thank
answer.
you. That's how we got into this
That is not the-
situation. We let it
That is how we
happen.
got in.
We let
Yep.
it happen.
And no more.
Yeah.
No more.
And let your,
the only
yeah, sorry, Tiff, go ahead.
No, go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, let your elected representatives know how you feel about these laws, because they're hearing from the social conservatives. That's how we got in this place.
Yeah.
But we have to tell them what trash we think these laws are. And we also have to go to the folks who are more supportive of human beings and human rights to say, we need you to show up better. We need you to fight harder, because we need to overturn these laws, and we need to support human beings and their families.
Our outrage has to be loud.
Yes, ma'am.
Ferocious.
Yes.
Ferocious and at the forefront of everything that we do. And the only way to do that is together. Elizabeth, I can't thank you enough.
I can't thank you
for being
enough.
here. I'm like literally almost in tears because this has been everything that I wanted it to be, this conversation and more. And I think that our listeners have learned a lot. You've given a lot of takeaway, a lot for them to, again, go back through and digest and listen and actualize their activism and allyship in a way that it will be meaningful to the queer community at large. Thank you for helping me and the listeners gain a better understanding of what's going on within the community and how we can all be better allies. Before we go, though, I can't go without mentioning your book, My Body Belongs to Me, A Parent's Guide. Tell us about the book, what age it's for, and where people can get it.
Thank you so much. So My Body Belongs to Me is a parent's guide. So it's designed for parents of younger kids, so little kids up until early adolescence, 11, 12 years old. And it's about how do you talk with your kids about boundaries and their own boundaries, the boundaries of others. How do you do this in ways that don't frighten them, but that really help them to feel empowered to know my body belongs to me and other people's bodies belong to them. And honestly, you can get it on Amazon. It's the best place to get it. They have a hardcover or a soft cover, but an actual book as well as an ebook if you prefer that. And thank you for holding that up. And thank you for being an amazing, amazing ally. You chose to use your time and your platform to talk about this topic. That's being an ally. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I live to do this every single day, every day that I can lift up someone else's voice. It's an honor and a pleasure. And I'm hopeful that all the ancestors are looking at this moment and feeling like, okay, we did something right with these two. We did something right with these two. I will put a link in our show notes for the book so that everyone, you need to get this book. If you have a little one, if you know someone who has a little one, if you're expecting a little one, you're going to need this book at some point. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes so that everyone can go grab a copy. And where can folks find you if they have questions, if they want to follow you on social, if they want to see where you're presenting, teaching, consulting, what like give us the tea.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, they can find me. My website is Dr. Schroe, DrSchroe.com. I'm also on Instagram, and you'll see a lot of nonsense between myself and the boy who is my son, and he does have a name that I sometimes remember, and that's also at Dr. Schroe. And Elizabeth Schroeder Consulting is on Facebook. I haven't been posting as much there yet, but I'm going to start. But there are resources on my website, including this wonderful resource of sex positive families, which is a great resource from my wonderful colleague, Melissa Carnegie. So if you are a parent and caregiver of kids of any age, I would go to sexpositivefamilies.com because she is amazing. So thank you for everything.
And please talk to Melissa. I would love to have her on the show so she could talk to us about some wonderful things. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being a part of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. You can listen, share, like, subscribe, comment, all the things to Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff on Spotify. And Spotify is the place to be. People, please. Even if you listen to this episode somewhere else, please go to Spotify because the video version, this whole interview is on Spotify. You can watch the podcast on Spotify on Wednesdays, as well as listen on Apple Pod, on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, all of that. And then also on YouTube on Thursdays. So please, please, please continue to share this information with anyone that you feel could benefit from it. This has been a joy and a pleasure. Just thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Truly, Shane. Honor was mine.
Thank you. All right. Guys, we will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao.